doing a November reading wrap up, or a December one for that matter, just because I know that I'm going to do a big annual 2024 reading wrap up on all of the books that I've read this year, and I didn't want the last 2 months to feel repetitive. But you know what? The vibe just felt right tonight. I just filmed the TikTok version of this and I feel like casually talking about some books tonight. So let's do a very casual, just sit down video on the 9 books that I read this month in November. I will say it was a very random reading month. I think I only had 1 out of the 9 books that I enjoyed. I don't know. Yeah, it was just an interesting reading month. I finished a series I was in. I read a thriller, a cozy witchy book, a couple of nonfiction books ranging from spiritual witchy books to a memoir. I read an independent author's book. I read my first real fantasy book, like fantasy. It was kind of by accident, to be honest. But yeah, these are the 9 books that I read in November, so let's talk about them. If you're new, I make a ton of book videos and I'm really trying to grow the booktube side of this community, so please follow. I also have a book talk that I'm very active on as well, and a bookstagram, so please go follow those. And if you're into it, I have a Goodreads account. All of this is linked down below, and then all of these books and much more are categorized over on my Amazon storefront, because as much as I recommend shopping locally, dang, Amazon has some good book deals sometimes, so it's worth checking out for sure. I'm also going to leave my booktube playlist of all of the book related videos that I post on this channel down below, but I think that's everything I need to talk about. So let's get into what I read this month in November. I like to talk about these books in chronological order, so we have to start with the books that I read first. Gosh, November like flew by, but at the same time it feels like the first few books that I read in November was such a long time ago. I guess it technically was, because November, yeah, it was a long time ago, because November was like a 5-week month. That makes sense. The most exciting thing about November is I finished the Chestnut Springs series. I read Reckless, which is the penultimate book in the series, and I read Hopeless, which is the final book of the Chestnut Springs series. And I will say I'm very sad that my time in Chestnut Springs has come to an end, but I'm very excited to go back in time and read her other series, the Gold Rush Ranch series, as well as continue the Rose Hill series, which is in the future. But Reckless, the first book that I finished in November, this follows Winter, which is Summer from the first book's older sister. It follows Winter and Theo's love story, and it is very similar to the second book in the series, Heartless, and Heartless was my favorite book in the whole series. This is my second favorite. I loved their chemistry, I loved their story, I loved Theo as a character and a role model, and how he just was a great example of what to do in a situation. Not to spoil anything about this book, the one thing that I really hate in books that I'm learning is I don't like the miscommunication part of a plot or trope or whatever you want to call it, and this deals with it, and it's ooh, like it made me angry, and it made me like I would have done things so differently. But the miscommunication part is just aggravating in books sometimes, and it definitely hurt because of the consequences of the miscommunication in this one. But I guess that's part of what makes this plot the plot. But I really enjoyed it. It was a really, really good, yeah. It was great. And then the final book in the series follows the oldest brother, Beau, as well as Bailey, who grew up on the land next door to their ranch. It's a very interesting love dynamic. I don't think this one is necessarily my favorite. There were a lot of things about this plot that I don't think were my favorite. Part of it just being like the character dynamics as well as their love story. I don't know. I enjoyed this book in the moment, but afterwards there was just a lot with like different tropes that I don't think were for me in this book, or at least it wasn't hitting. One of them being the age gap, which is interesting because I really liked it in Heartless, but this one I think was just so much like pure innocent talk because she is all of those things, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. That plus the whole like purity, innocent thing. And then there was another part of the plot that I can't really say without spoiling it. I don't know. I just wasn't like as obsessed with them as I was with the other couples in their other books, but it was still really good. I think it wrapped up the series really well, and I loved the last scene at Harvey's birthday, which so cute, made me cry. It really did capture that like generational like family of like being a grandparent and just seeing your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' partners and the dogs and everyone just like being family, and knowing that it started with you, like crying my eyes out. He didn't even have to say all of that, I think, in the last chapter, but that's how I felt in Harvey's chapter. But yeah, really great. If you haven't read the Chestnut Springs series and you need a nice little small town cowboy romance escapism, highly recommend. I wasn't sure if this would be my thing, and I am obsessed. This was like the best thing to come from reading this summer. And Flawless, the first book, it's not my favorite. Heartless, at least make it to the second book, because Heartless, oh my god, that book was like crack. Those were the only romance books that I read this month. Shocking. For some reason, I feel like people think romance is my favorite genre, and I do read a lot of it, but I think it's because I like reading a nice, fluffy, sometimes fluffy, usually spicy romance book per month just to mix it up. I don't know, maybe I do read a lot of romance. The next book that I read was AJ Wynn's book that she sent over, The Other Side. This came out in October, and AJ sent me a personal signed copy when it came out, and I'm so grateful for that, so thank you again. I will link this book down below because I love supporting independent authors. It's so important. Her book is available on Amazon if you're curious. I had a lot of fun with this one. Little bit of mystery, a little bit of romance. It follows two teachers that work at this preparatory school, and they don't really like each other that much. Well, I will say I don't think she liked him that much in the beginning. There is a decades-old mystery at this school, and then there is a current mystery, and they tie together, and the twist, oh my gosh, I did not see the twist coming. Major points for that. I love when I can't see the twist, and it was really, really good. This was really fun, so definitely recommend checking out AJ Wynn's The Other Side. Next, I read The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. I am sad to say that this book was kind of a miss. I really wanted to enjoy this book. I thought it would be the coziest, perfect fall read when I purchased this, and unfortunately, it just wasn't it, and I'm very curious to hear what other people thought about this book as well. I will say the Goodreads reviews for the most part align with my thoughts on how I felt about this book. I thought the writing was absolutely beautiful, like lyrical, descriptive, metaphoric. Like, she is such a great writer, but there wasn't any plot. Like, I just felt like I was reading somebody's descriptions for a whole book, and it's hard to stay focused with that. I actually had to read this in like the practical magic narrator's voice from the movie to stay focused, because it kind of reads like that, but for some reason, I couldn't get invested. I couldn't get connected to the characters, and it made it hard to care about what was happening when I couldn't really care for the characters. Goodreads definitely agrees that the main character was a little bit hard to like, and I was confused about the love interest and whether or not we were supposed to like him and whether or not we were supposed to be rooting for him, because when you meet the love interest, he is with somebody else, and it just feels kind of icky. How he comes into the story and where his life is and what's going on, it's really icky, and you feel like you shouldn't really want them to be together. I did really want to enjoy this book. Also, there was some weird, like, conservative religious undertones, which does not pair well with a spooky witchy book. Why would a family of witches attend church? It didn't make any sense, and Goodreads reviews definitely gave her some harsh criticism with that, but I'm just not here to read about a family going to church when I thought I was reading about a family of witches. So unfortunately, I don't think I will be reading any of her other books, and I probably wouldn't recommend this to anybody. So it's kind of a bummer. I think I gave this 2 stars. If you're looking for a witchy book centered around family, I would highly recommend Witch of Wild Things instead. I love that book. That was a 5-star cozy witchy read for me last year, so highly recommend Witch of Wild Things over The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic, which is very unfortunate because I really wanted to read that book and I thought I was gonna love it. This is when I kind of like needed a break from fiction. Like, I wasn't feeling a romance book. I didn't want to go into a thriller. I don't know. I think this book definitely put me in a bit of like a reading, not like a reading slump, but just I didn't know what to read. So I switched over to nonfiction, and I quickly read Dodie's Secrets for the Mad. This was her little like memoir book that she came out with a few years ago. I love Dodie. I used to watch her videos on YouTube. She is the sweetest soul, and I was so excited to kind of like dive into her brain a little bit, and this is just the cutest little like memoir book about her life with doodles and song lyrics and writing, and it was so interesting. I learned a lot about her that she's never really shared on her social media platforms before, like depersonalization, where she had a really hard time feeling real in her body, and she does a really great job at describing instances in her life where she did not feel real. Things in front of her did not feel real. It was really interesting. There's a whole chapter on her sexuality, which I appreciated. I got to see a part of her that I've never really like seen online before. It was very raw. I wasn't expecting it to be as like emotional emotionally raw as it was, but this was a really cool, great read. So if you're looking for something easy to read, quick little memoir, I came across this at Goodwill. It was a great Goodwill find. I also have a whole bookshelf in my office upstairs of all of the other YouTuber books that I've read and wanted to support. As a fellow YouTuber, I feel like it's important to show support to other creators just like you. So I have a whole bookshelf supporting other YouTubers and all the books that they've written, and I think this is going to look perfect up there. I can't wait to add this to the bookshelf. And then I read 2 witchy books. I don't know, I felt like reading, but I didn't want to read like a story. So I read Cookbook of Shadows. This is a witchy cookbook full of different spell recipes that you can do in the kitchen. I have a friend that works for this amazing witchy publishing company that just publishes spiritual books, and she has graciously gifted me so many witchy books throughout the years, including this one. I've tabbed a couple of recipes that I want to try, but this is exactly what it sounds like. It's like a ton of different recipes. Like the one I just opened to is roasted rosemary turnips, eat to encourage peace and bring freedom from conflict. They have muffins, eat to invite and welcome more love. There's also a whole section on different like herbs and spices and different uses for them, like spiritually. There's space for notes underneath recipes, or like blueberries that I opened to is corresponding with love, friendship, happiness, protection, health, and like different uses for them. So it's really cool. She also is very good about including like vegan or meatless options as well, but super, super cool. This is going with all of the other cookbooks in my kitchen, but a really awesome like spiritual kitchen book. And you don't have a lot of witchy or spiritual type of spell books for the kitchen, so this is definitely unique, but I'm a big fan. I also read this little book of lunar magic, and this focuses on the moon and different moon spells that you can do. I have a couple of moon spell books, but this one is filled with even more spells and bits of knowledge that I love to read about. I definitely tabbed a lot up here and on the side of like different spells that at this point in my life I might someday want to reference. In my younger 20s, I feel like I have so many tabs in older spell books of things that like I would never feel the need to mess with now, like a lot of love spells or things in my life that now it's like, you know what, I'm settled, I'm good. A lot of helpful information in here though, so if you're looking for a little easy coffee table book to get through, like I read this before bed in one night, I felt like I was still using my brain differently than if I were reading like a romance book, and I was underlining and tabbing and learning, so really, really nice. I highly recommend this book as well. And then the last 2 books I read this month were on vacation. I just got back yesterday from California for the week. It was really, really nice. We mostly were in San Diego, but we also spent a few nights in Big Bear, and we drove up to Newport for the day because I love Newport. But I finished 2 books on that trip. The first book that I finished was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. At this point, I think this is like my 4th or 5th book by Frida McFadden that I've read. I really enjoyed it. I read this in probably like less than 24 hours. I read like the majority of it in almost one sitting, and that's what I love about her books is they are so easy to read and get through and like get into. So they make great travel books or books to read on flights to make the flight seem short, books to read like in a cabin, and that's exactly where I read this. I'm proud of myself because I think I finally am starting to figure out the equation for the twists. I want to say so badly like some of the twists that I predicted, but I can't say anything without spoiling it. I enjoyed it though. I might have liked this more than Never Lie, which a lot of people have said was their favorite. The Teacher still is top for me. It's like The Teacher and then The Locked Door, The Inmate, and Never Lie are all kind of like tied. I don't have like a top second choice yet, but I want to read The Boyfriend next, so we shall see. I think I gave this like 4 stars or 3. I don't know. The last book that I read, well, to be honest, I'm still finishing this book. I'm having a hard time getting through this. It's Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I was really excited for this book. I thought it would be so cute and whimsical and magical, and it is, but it is very, very fantasy, and I didn't expect, for some reason, didn't think I was picking up a fantasy book. I thought I was picking up like a cute book about fairies, which is fantasy. I don't know, that is on me. The first page had like so many words that I needed to learn, like the land and the names, and just I had no idea what was going on. World building and all of that stuff that I haven't read a lot of before, besides my dark romance series, Her Soul to Take, which is technically, I think, underneath fantasy. It's like a dark romance fantasy book. That, and then like If the Hunger Games counts, I don't think I've read a fantasy book like this. The best way that I can describe this book is it reads like a lullaby. It is so beautiful, but I fall asleep every single time I try to read this book. On the plane ride to and from California, I was like starting to fall asleep reading this, and that is when I stopped and was reading The Inmate to like wake back up. But I am determined to finish it. I don't think I'm going to be continuing this series. Yeah, I'm curious what other people thought about this book if you've read it, because I don't think it's for me. In the beginning, it had me. Like, I was invested. She basically goes to this town where a certain type of fairy is known to exist, but they've never been documented, so she wants to study these fairies. I guess these types of fairies can sometimes hide in the mortal world and pretend to be human, but they're really fae. At some point, she like finds the door to their world and she like studies these fairies and more goes down. I don't want to spoil it. I kept thinking I would get invested and I would start to get into it, and I never did. And at this point I have like 40 pages left and I just need to finish it, but I'm not, like, I wish I was invested in this, so it is kind of sad and disappointing. I don't know if that's on me or if other people felt the same way. My favorite thing, I cannot wait to finish this book so I can hop onto Goodreads and see what other people that I follow have thought about this book. But yeah, kind of a bummer. Those are the 9 books I read in November. I feel like this was such a random reading month. Hopefully December is better because I kind of feel like I'm in a weird reading mood. Definitely let me know your thoughts if you've read any of these books and what you are currently reading or have read in November. I don't think I'm going to do a wrap up for December, and I don't even know if I'm going to do a December TBR, at least on YouTube. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where December takes us. I do want to film a couple of like annual, more like book videos, like reflecting on the whole year more with like my favorite books that I've read this year, my least favorite, or whatever, like my 5-star reads. I'll figure it out. Yeah, so I don't want to make it too repetitive, but all of these books and more can be found on my Amazon storefront. My favorite part when I finish filming these monthly videos is I can finally put these books on their forever shelves. I haven't put them away on like their shelf yet that they're going to live on until after I've read them. But now that I filmed all the videos I need to film with them, I can go put them away. But yeah, thank you for watching. Bye!